Today we discuss upper GI bleed and hepatorenal syndrome. First we discuss about the upper GI bleed. Bleeding derived from any source proximal to ligamentum of treats. The duodenal suspensory ligament attached at the junction of duodenum and jejunum. As we see over the diaphragm, the greenish band is the ligament of treats which wind below at the junction of the duodenum and jejunum. Most common gastrointestinal emergency. In UK, 50 to 170 admissions per 100,000 each year. Mortality of admitted patient is about 10%. There is risk scoring systems have been developed to stratify the risk of needing endoscopic therapy or of having a poor outcome. Here you see the modified Blatchford score. It having the advantage that it may be used before endoscopy to predict the need for intervention to treat bleeding. Low score 2 or less are associated with a very low risk of adverse outcome. Over the right side, if you see, the admission risk markers are blood urea, hemoglobin for men and women, systolic blood pressure, and other markers. Blood urea more than 25 millimole per liter, having a score 6, 10 to 25 millimole per liter, score 4, 8 to 10 millimole per liter, 3, 6.5 to 8 millimole per liter, 2, and less than 6.5 having a score 0. Hemoglobin for men less than 10 gram per deciliter, 6, between 10 and 11.9 gram per deciliter, 3, 12 to 12.59 gram per deciliter, 1, and more than 13 gram per deciliter, 0. Hemoglobin for women 10 gram per deciliter, 6, 10 to 11.9 gram per deciliter, 1, and equal to or more than 12 gram per deciliter, 0. Systolic blood pressure less than 90 millimeter of mercury, having 3, 90 to 99, 2, 100 to 109, 1, and more than 109 millimeter of mercury, 0. Other markers are the presentation with syncope, hepatic disease, and cardiac failure, having score 2, pulse more than 100 beats per minute, and presentation with melena, having score 1, and none of the above, 0. So low score 2 or less are associated with a very low risk of adverse outcome. Common causes of the upper GI bleed: esophagitis 10%, usually with hiatus hernia; peptic ulcer 35 to 50%; vascular malformation 5%; aortic graft or aortoduodenal fistula 0.2%; varices, esophageal or gastric 2 to 9%; recting leading to the Mallory-Weiss tear 5%; carcinoma of stomach or duodenum 2%; and gastric erosion 10 to 20%. So most common is the peptic ulcer, followed by the gastric erosion and varices. So here are the pictures: the gastric ulcer and the bleeding gastric ulcers showing over the right side, left side, and over the left side the duodenal ulcer showing duodenal ulcer and bleeding duodenal ulcer. Above picture show the esophageal varices and the bleeding esophageal varices also seen, and below the gastric varices. In the middle lower side, Mallory-Weiss tear have been shown, and over the right lower side, esophagitis. These are the endoscopic picture. Angiodysplasia of the stomach. You see the reddish spots over the upper diaphragm. then esophageal tumor and gastric carcinoma showing in the lower figure. Clinical presentation. Patient may present with one of the following complaint with upper GI bleed. They may present with the hematemesis, which is the red with clots when bleeding is rapid and profuse, or black coffee colored when less severe. Patient may present with syncope due to the hypotension from intravascular volume depletion. Patient may have anemia, suggests the chronic bleeding. Patient having melena caused by bleeding from upper GIT, although hemorrhage from the right side of the colon is occasionally responsible. Important point is the characteristic color and smell are a result of the action of the digestive enzymes and of bacteria on hemoglobin. Severe acute upper GI bleeding can sometimes cause maroon or bright red stool. The clinical approach to the patient, all cases with a recent within 48 hours significant GI bleed should be admitted in hospital. In many, no immediate treatment is required as only a small amount of blood loss. Approximately 85% of the patients stop bleeding spontaneously within 48 hours. Factors affecting the risk of rebleeding and death are age, evidence of comorbidity like cardiac failure, ischemic heart disease, chronic kidney disease and malignant disease. Presence of features of shock like pallor, cold, peripheries, tachycardia, low blood pressure. Endoscopic diagnosis of Malry-Weiss tear and the peptic ulceration. Endoscopic stigmata of the recent bleeding, that is adherent blood clot and spurting vessel have been seen, and clinical sign of the chronic liver disease. These are the factors which affect the risk of rebleeding and death. Management of upper GI bleed. The patient when received should be assessed for airway, breathing, circulation. Then resuscitation should be done by IVSS and prepare for the blood crossing for blood transfusion in the future. Risk assessment for severe, moderate or mild bleeding. Then do as early as possible the endoscopy. If endoscopy shows low risk lesion, so medical treatment is sufficient. If high risk, then endoscopic treatment, and if the patient rebleed, surgery may be the option. So as far as the management is concerned, the IVSS, first step to gain the intravenous access using at least one large bore cannula. So clinical assess the patient, define the circulatory status. Severe bleeding causes the tachycardia, hypotension and oliguria. Patient may be cold and sweating and may be agitated. Seek the evidence of the liver disease, jaundice, cutaneous stigmata, hepatosplenomegaly and ascites may be present in decompensated cirrhosis. Identify the comorbidity like cardiorespiratory, cerebrovascular or renal disease, because these may be worsened by acute bleeding and they increase the hazards of endoscopy and surgical operations. Basic investigations at the time of admission is the full blood count. Chronic or subacute bleeding leads to anemia, but the hemoglobin concentration may be normal after sudden major bleeding. Thrombocytopenia may be a clue to the presence of the hypersplenism in chronic liver disease. Urea and electrolyte should be done. It shows the evidence of the renal failure, and elevated urea with normal creatinine concentration implies the severe bleeding. Liver function test should be done. It shows the evidence of the chronic liver disease. Prothrombin time, patient having liver disease or are anticoagulated. Cross-matching, at least 2 units of blood should be cross-matched if a significant bleed is suspected. Resuscitation intravenous crystalloid fluid should be given to raise the blood pressure, and blood should be transfused when the patient is actively bleeding with low blood pressure and tachycardia. Oxygen should be given to all patients in shock. Patients should be closely observed with hourly measurement of pulse, blood pressure, and urine output. Endoscopy, this should be carried out after adequate resuscitation, ideally within 24 hours, and will yield a diagnosis in 80% of the cases. Patients who are found to have major endoscopic stigmata of the recent hemorrhage can be treated endoscopically using a thermal or mechanical modalities such as heater probe or endoscopic clips, combined with injection of the dilute adrenaline into the bleeding point. That is called as dual therapy. Thermal or mechanical modality with injection of the dilute adrenaline is called the dual therapy. A biological inert hemostatic mineral powder TC325 can be used as rescue therapy when standard therapy fails. IV proton pump inhibitors may prevent the rebleeding. Patient found to have bled from varices should be treated by band ligation. If this fails, balloon tamponade is another option, while arrangements are made for a transjugular intrahepatic photosystemic shunt. Here you see the endoscopy modalities of the therapy, thermal injection of the mechanical therapy. On the right side, the topmost, the duodenal ulcer having the thermal therapy, then gastric ulcer injection therapy, showing over middle picture, and the laser therapy for angiodysplasia, thermal therapy, before laser therapy and the after laser therapy in the lower diagram. Bleed from the varices. Over the left side, the esophageal varices band ligation have been shown, and over the right side, the Sang's-Taken Blackmore tube, which having the esophageal balloon at the lower side and the gastric balloon, and the traction have been given, and this esophageal balloon and the gastric balloon presses over the varices and stop the bleed from varices. Surgery is indicated when endoscopic hemostasis fails to stop active bleeding. If rebleeding occurs on one occasion in an elderly or frail patient, or twice in a younger, fitter patient. If available, angiographic embolization is an effective alternative to surgery in elderly patient. On the right side, you see the angiography in an embolization technique for the treatment of the peptic ulcer. So catheter inserting embolization coil into the artery, it promotes the thrombosis and catheter in the artery. Here you see the ulcer and below is the vessels and embolization coil in place and the gel form in place and causing the embolism in the vessel and stop bleed. The choice of operation depends on the site and diagnosis of the bleeding lesion. Duodenal ulcers are treated by underrunning with or without pyloroplasty. Underrunning of or gastric ulcers can also be carried out. A biopsy must be taken to exclude the carcinoma. So you see below the right side of the picture the underrunning of an ulcer. And local excision may be performed when neither is possible, so partial gastrectomy is required. Bill Road 1 and Bill Road 2 gastrectomy shown over the right lower picture. Eradication following treatment for ulcer bleeding, all patients should avoid non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Patient with H. pylori infection should receive the eradication therapy. Antibiotic amoxicillin 1 gram twice daily and either the clarithromycin 500 milligram twice daily or metronidazole 400 milligram twice daily, and along with proton pump inhibitor, that is esomeprazole 20 milligram twice daily, lansoprazole 30 milligram twice daily, omeprazole 20 to 40 milligram twice daily, pantoprazole 40 milligram twice daily, or rabeprazole 20 milligram twice daily. So here is the summary of the management of acute gastrointestinal bleeding, history and examination as soon as the patient is coming. Monitor the pulse and blood pressure. Half hourly, take blood for hemoglobin, urea, electrolytes, liver biochemistry, coagulation screen, group and cross matching. Establish the IVSS. Give blood transfusion or colloid if necessary. In shock and hemoglobin is less than 10. Oxygen therapy. Urgent endoscopy. Continue to monitor pulse and blood pressure. Re-endoscope for continued bleeding or hypovolemia, and surgery if bleeding persists. Prognosis: mortality from gastrointestinal hemorrhage has not changed from 5 to 12% over the years, despite many changes in management, mainly because of a demographic shift to more elderly patients with comorbidity. The lowest mortality rates are achieved in dedicated medical surgical GI unit. The second topic is the hepatorenal syndrome. It occurs in 10% of patients with advanced cirrhosis complicated by ascites. Here the urine output is low with a low urinary sodium concentration. Capacity to concentrate urine is intact and almost normal renal histology. It may be precipitated by the over-vigorous diuretic therapy, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, diarrhea or paracentesis, and infection, particularly the spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. Diagnosis of exclusion of other causes of acute renal injury. Two clinical types, both are mediated by the renal vasoconstriction due to underfilling of the arterial circulation, type 1 and type 2. Pathogenesis. Initiating factor is extreme peripheral vasodilatation. This leads to extreme decrease in effective blood volume and hypotension, leading to vasoconstriction of renal vasculature. An increased preglomerular vascular resistance leading to reduced GFR and plasma renin remains high. It leads to the salt and water retention with reabsorption of the sodium from the renal tubules. Another factor, that decreased cardiac output further exacerbate the hemodynamic abnormalities, leading to severe water and sodium retention. So, hepatorenal syndrome type 1, it is characterized by progressive oliguria, rapid rise of the serum creatinine, that is increase in serum creatinine more than 2.5 milligram per deciliter, or 50% decrease in creatinine clearance during the period of less than 2 weeks. There is usually no proteinuria, urine sodium excretion of less than 10 millimole per 24 hours, and a urine plasma osmolality ratio is more than 1.5. It is rapidly progressive and having a very poor prognosis. Type 2 usually occurs in patients with refractory ascites, and it is characterized by a moderate and stable increase in serum creatinine. Here the prognosis is better. Treatment: albumin infusion in combination with IV terlipressin. Alternatively, octreotide subcutaneous or intravenous with midodrine orally 7.5 milligram thrice a day. Duration of treatment 7 to 14 days. Effective in about 2/3 of the patient. Hemodialysis should not be used routinely because it does not improve the outcome. Patients who survive should be considered for liver transplantation. which along with tips is an effective treatment in appropriate patients. Prognosis worse of all complication of cirrhosis. Median survival in type 1 is 1 to 2 weeks and median survival in type 2 is up to 6 months as shown over the graph over the right side.